Let's speak to Sreeram Chaulia. He's professor and dean at the Jindal School of International Affairs. He's joining us via Skype from Kolkata in India. So, of course, India, one of the countries targeted by the U.S. President Donald Trump. It's bad news for exporters in India, but are you surprised by this, given Trump's trade views on India and India's own recent turn towards protectionism?
No, it's not a surprise, Darine, because we know Trump is an isolationist and a protectionist and believes in economic nationalism and America first. And he's a departure from previous U.S. presidents, both Democratic and Republican, who used to show some degree of magnanimity and generosity in trade, even though they also had complaints towards developing countries like India in the past. They would understand that, we have some compulsions. We are a low-income country still. We are a developing country, and we cannot be on an equal footing with rich countries when we do trade. So the whole idea was to level the playing field by giving us some concessions through the GSP mechanism. And Trump says, no, nothing like that. There's no free lunch. You have to be reciprocal. We have actually a small trade surplus with the U.S. India has about $27 billion. It's nothing compared to, for example, the Chinese surplus, which is massive. It's over $300 billion. And that is where, of course,
but Trump is saying that India has failed to provide the United States with assurances that it will provide equitable and reasonable access to its markets in numerous sectors. Are his concerns valid?
Well, if it's a purely reciprocal understanding, yes. We have our average tariff rates at around 13%, 1.3, and the average tariffs the U.S. has is 2%. So they can argue that, it's being unfair to the U.S. But if you look at the income levels of the two countries, if you look at the scale of the commercial production and the manufacturing that they have compared to manufacturing that we have, it's actually chalk and cheese. They're two different things. But Trump says that, our workers are losing jobs because of trade with developing countries, and we've got to hit back at them. So he has this mentality that, for too long, the U.S. has been taken advantage of. But if you look at it in a broader perspective, India will also retaliate with tariffs.
But here's the thing. Indian officials have said that, in fact, they will not impose retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods. And they're also saying that this is going to have a limited impact. I suppose we'd expect that statement from Indian officials. But do you think it's going to have an impact? And can India manage without preferential trade deals?
Well, we need to diversify our exports. You're right that we have not. For example, last year, Trump imposed steel and aluminum tariffs on India. The amount was small. It was only around $240 million. And we have exercised not to retaliate, hoping that we will ultimately do a deal. And that's the thing with Trump, right? He threatens, he blackmails, there's like a brinkmanship. And then he says, OK, I want to do a deal with you. That's what he's doing with China. That's what he's done with Mexico and with Canada. And likely he will also be pushing. He's been saying that India is a tariff king, but it wants to come and do a deal with me because it wants to make me happy.
OK, so behind the scenes, would we expect Indian officials to try to broker some sort of deal?
Already the talks have been on behind the scenes. We are also putting in the non-economic aspect here. We are saying, look, we are a major defense partner of the U.S. We are a strategic partner of the U.S. If you want us to grow so that we can counterbalance China, you should treat us well. But that's not happening, unfortunately, with Trump, because he's weak on geopolitics. He doesn't see India's value in a geopolitical or a strategic sense. He's only looking at it as, here is one more country that's cheating the U.S. Here is a competitor of the U.S., and we've got to stop them from doing these things. So I think it's unfortunately, there's a conflict of interest. We have general elections coming up in India. We cannot remove subsidies. We cannot do away with all our protective mechanisms for our domestic industry the way Trump is demanding. So at the end of the day, I think there's very little meeting ground on this. Eventually, this trade war is likely to escalate, in my view, because they look at India as a bad boy. And I don't think we are. I think we'll be fair, but that's their mindset, and which is creating this clash.
We thank you very much for speaking to us from Kolkata in India. Still ahead on Al Jazeera.